Hi everyone, welcome to the Swift Arcade. I'm your host, Jonathan Rasmussen. So excited that you're here with us today. We're right in the middle of continuing our Starbucks app building. Last episode, we saw how to add some tiles to our scrollable stack view here. And in this episode, we're actually gonna fill in and go ahead and add some tiles looking like this. We're gonna add some assets. We're gonna see what the architecture looks like to add these kinds of tiles and really start to flesh out the home view of our Starbucks app. So come on and join us and let's take a look and see how we can set up some tiles. So before we get into the code, I'd just like to go over with you the architecture of how we're actually going to do this, because I mentioned in the previous episode that each one of these tiles you see here on the Starbucks app, that's going to be just a view controller. We're going to add that to our stack view here. And by adding these view controllers, we can flesh out and build out the app. Now what we're going to do that's a little bit different is we're going to extract the views from the view controllers. Now why would we want to do that? Well, sometimes view controllers can get really big, and I want to show you the practice of what it looks like to extract a subview from a parent view controller and then add it back in. It's a really handy technique to know about. It'll help keep your view controllers a little more clutter-free. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Now we're going to go ahead and do that with AutoLayout because AutoLayout is the simplest way to do that. It's really well understood and it's the recommended way. But I want to show you two other techniques that confused me at first, but I saw them pop up in WWDC videos or on legacy projects I'd been on. So I'm going to quickly go over what those other two techniques are along with AutoLayout, so at least you'll be aware of them. Okay, so we're going to extract child views from parent view controllers, and we're going to lay these out in tiles. Now the standard way and the recommended way we can do this is of course with good old AutoLayout. So we're going to have AutoLayout here. We're going to extract a child view. We're just going to pin it to the parent like this with the top, bottom, leading, trailing. This is all standard AutoLayout stuff. This is what we're going to do in the app. And if you get anything else for the next 2 minutes, don't forget AutoLayout because that's what we're going to do. But now let's take a look at the other two methods. One that you'll see sometimes used in WWDC, that's Apple's big developer conference videos, is the older style of laying out subviews, and that's called auto resize mask. In this one, you have the child view set up with its auto resizing mask to basically control whether these things are going to expand or contract on a flexible width or height scale. It's just an older style way of doing layout with child views. We're not going to use it, but I just wanted to show you what it looks like. So if you do come across in your travels, you're not intimidated by it. And then the third way is something called a full screen takeover. So in this one, if you have a child view and you just want to set it in your view controller, you can take that view that you've created and just set it equal to the parent's view, just like that in almost a one-liner. That will take the child view or the sub view, stretch it out to cover the entirety of the view controller's view. And it's really nice, it's really simple, and it's handy if you've got UI table view controllers or collection views. You can just set it to be the view controller's entirety all at once. Now, if any of this isn't making a ton of sense, don't worry about it. We're going to stick with standard AutoLayout stuff. I just wanted to quickly show you that, so if you come across that in your travels, you'll know what they are. Okay, with that, let's get into the code and now see how we can add some tile view controllers to our Starbucks app. Okay, the first thing I'd like to do is just a little bit of cleanup with you and just show you one refactoring, really a poor name for something I chose in our last episode. Let's go back into the home controller and you'll see where we created some tiles. These tile views are actually view controllers. And I want to reuse that name view controller and tile view in this new work we're going to do. But even more importantly, I don't like the name of this tile view because it's a bit misleading. I really should have renamed this tile view controller just to make it clear that this is a view controller. And this is going to be important because we're going to be extracting child views from parent view controllers. So first thing we're going to do is let's go ahead and rename this to something clear, more clearly indicative of what it actually is. And for us, it's just going to be a placeholder view controller. So I'm going to come in here and go Control Command E for refactor. And this is just a handy thing built into Xcode. I can now rename all instances of this file in here. And I'm going to call this placeholder placeholder view controller. Placeholder view controller, just like this. It's a bit longer. I'm not such a fan of the super long names, but it's definitely more clear what we're doing. I'm just going to hit enter. And of course, that doesn't actually do a full refactoring and change the name of the file itself. So let's go ahead and click on tile view, what this thing used to be named, double tap the word there, tile view, and go Command V. I'm just going to call that placeholder view controller. And if we go Command R and run that, now everything should be exactly the same, but I just wanted to more accurately name that. And that's just going to be, it's just a temporary placeholder for a view controller we've got. And voila, everything is still the same. Now the next thing we need to do is to go ahead and build out this subview. I would like to add some image assets. These are images here, and I need to get those into our project. And these are real images we need, not the SF symbols we were using before for images down here. Now where I currently have the assets in the Git repository is if you click on Starbucks and you go into Assets, Home, you'll see some images here. I'm just going to go ahead and bring those into the project here. I'm going to go to our Assets file in the project. I'm going to bring up our Finder. I'm going to create in here a home directory because these are all home images. So I'm just going to go new folder. I'm going to call it home by double tapping on here, or single tapping, I should say. And then I'm just going to highlight these images here for some of the tiles we've got. And there's a few other things in here we're going to use later on. And I'm just going to drag those into the project under home here. And now we should have some images just of the single retina size. I haven't bothered converting it to the double or the triple. But we've got some assets in here now, and now we can go ahead and load and use these images for our tiles. Okay, and with that setup out of the way, now we're ready to actually go in here and do what we really want to do, which is add a new view controller and a new view for each of these tiles. So let's go back to the project. Let's go into our home directory. Let's go Command N, and let's create a new Swift file here called Tile View Controller. And let's go ahead and build this out. So we're just going to import UI kit here. I'm going to go class tile view controller. This is going to extend a UI view controller. And now normally we have a view controller. We could fully build everything in here, but remember we're going to extract that subview and it hasn't been created yet, but let's just type it out now. We're going to create something called a tile view. This doesn't exist yet, but why don't we go ahead and just stub it in also. Let's click on home. I'm going to go Command N. We're going to add a new file. This is going to be our tile view. This is just the view of our tile. It's going to sit inside our view controller, which we're going to add in just a second. Let's go ahead and create it. Oh, I've already got one named tile view controller because of the previous one we had. Let me hit cancel here and see what we have. So the problem here was that we renamed placeholder view controller, but I forgot to rename the actual file on disk. So my apologies. Let's go ahead and just select the existing tile view that's there. I'm just going to go Command V to give it placeholder view controller. That's the full name of the file now on disk. I'm going to hit return. And with that now, we won't have that conflict anymore. So let's try that again. Let's go Command N. Let's go Swift file. I'm going to add a tile view. This time it's not going to complain. That's good. And let's go ahead and just stub out this tile view. So this is going to be a class. It's going to be called tile view. It's going to extend UIView. And let's just go like this for a second. Okay. So we've got that stubbed out. Let's go back to our tile view controller now. Remember about those three techniques we talked about at the beginning of the episode. Here we're just going to lay out this tile view in this view controller using AutoLayout. That's all we're going to do. So let's just go in here and let's start with our standard viewed load, the standard place where we typically set up our load stuff in our view controller. Here we'll call super on the viewed load, so we'll call the parent in case there were some other things that needed to be called there. And then I'm just going to stick with that standard pattern I've been using for other view controllers so far. I'm going to add a style and a layout function here. And this view controller I know is going to be pretty simple, so I'm not going to bother putting it in an extension, although I would if I thought I had a lot more work to do there. But for us, let's just go ahead and do it right in the function here. I'm going to go style, I'm going to go layout, and now we can style and layout whatever we need for our view controller here. Now, of course, this is going to be a very simple small view controller because we're extracting all the heavy lifting for the view out into this tile view. So for here, all we need to do is set our tile view. We're going to set it up for auto layout. So we're going to do the translate mask, set that equal to false. Then we'll come in down here to the auto layout. And now we need to lay out this extracted tile view within our parent here. And of course, that's pretty simple to do. The more we do this, the easier it gets. If we go into layout, what do we always need to do? We need to add our subviews to our parent view. So we can go ahead and do that. We're going to add our tile view to our parent. And in this case, just doing simple auto layout, we're going to take the tile view's top, leading, trailing, and bottom anchor and just pin it to this view controller's top, leading, trailing, bottom anchor. And that's it. This view controller for now is set up. It has an extracted tile view that it's going to take, stretch out to all four corners of its view, and this is good enough for now. Now let's switch over to the tile view and see how we can actually start laying out and designing this view right here. Okay, so if we look at one of these tiles, we see we've got an image, a couple of labels, and a button. So why don't we start by just creating an image view here and see if we can't get that laid out first. So let's just go into our tile view and we're going to create an image view here. This is going to be a plain old UI image view. And let's go ahead and do the initialization of how we typically have to create these views. We're going to want to override an init method, init frame in this case, and we're going to call super.init. And in this case, I am going to use the same constructor on the parent, which is frame. And I'm going to ignore the rectangle they pass in here. I'm just going to create this initial view with a frame of 0. And of course, it's telling me we need this required initializer, so I'm just going to accept that. And then I'm going to go ahead and just continue following. I like the separation of style and layout, so I'm just going to go ahead and create these similar methods here. These ones I will put in an extension because I want to have these kind of separate from the initialization up here. So here I am going to go extension tile view. And all I'm doing down here with this extension here is I'm just taking methods that I defined up here and separating them down here just to give a little bit of space between the initialization and some of the work. So now I can go function style here. Now I can go function layout here. And we can go ahead and start working with this image view. So what's the first thing we always want to do with any components in any views when we're styling them with auto layout? We always want to take them and set their translate masks equal to false. If we don't do that, auto layout is not going to work. And in this case, with the image view, there's two other things that we're going to do. One is I just want to set a property on the image view, scale aspect fill. That's going to make the image fill while keeping its scale and fill up the available area that we have here. And then this image view clip to bounds, what this means is if this image spills over or is bigger than this allowed view, it's going to clip it and just show what fits within the bounds. So depending upon what you want, you can make these things true or false, but I'm going to make this true because I just want it to be clipped within there. Now, let's go ahead and do the layout for the image view here. So for layout, we always need to take, we are a view ourselves. So here we can just go add subview, add our image view. And then once we've got that added, now we can go ahead and do our auto layout. So here I'm just going to go ahead and add that little snippet I've got here, layout constraint activate. For our image view here, let's see what we want to do. I think to start off with, this image is just pinned to the top, leading and trailing. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to take our image view. I'm going to go Command I just to reformat that back over. I'm going to take the image view's top and stick it to the top of our view, the leading, put it on the leading edge of our view, and trailing to the trailing. Now, I haven't specified bottom. I'm hoping this will be enough just to go top, leading, trailing for it to size. With that, we're almost ready to go. We've got our tile view controller. We've got our tile view, which is going to be laid out in here. What we need to do now is actually use this tile view controller. And the way we do that is let's go back to our home controller. And where we've got these placeholders here, let's now actually put a tile view controller. So remember, these are our tiles. This is the array of view controllers, which controls what's going to appear in our stack view here. Let's go ahead and add just this plain old tile view controller. Let's hit Command R, run, cross our fingers, and see what happens. Okay, nothing shows up there. I'm not sure why. I think there's actually two problems here. One is I think our tile view isn't showing up. And there's a couple of reasons why that could be. One is when you have views within scroll views, sometimes you need to really be explicit about what their height and width are. So one technique for dealing with this, whenever you have any view that's not showing up in a stack or a scroll view, you can override something called its intrinsic size. Intrinsic size is basically an auto layout property where it's like, what's the recommended size for this view if you don't have any explicit constraints describing it? So in this case, what we can do is we can return an intrinsic content size for our tile view. And in this case, it's just going to be a height and width. And here, these are just recommendations. We don't need to know exactly what they are. So I'm just going to give it an arbitrary width of 100 and an arbitrary height of 300. If we go Command R and run this at now, we should see something hopefully show up in our tile view there that will give it a little bit of height because we've basically recommended how high this thing should be. Okay, so there's our view. Now there's no image in there. That's the other thing I forgot. So let's go back to our image view and let's see if we can add the actual image that we'd like to appear in this tile here. So I'm going to go image view.image. I'm going to set that to be the UI image named. And I know the image happens to be named meatless. That's the one that appears in our assets here. And if we go Command R here, voila, there. We've got an actual image popping up. Good stuff. Now in a similar way, let's go ahead and add those other components to our tile. In this case, we're going to want to add a label for this title label here. We're going to add another label here called subtitle label. And then I'm just going to call this one here CTA button for call to action button. And let's just go ahead and add those now. I'm just going to move a little bit quicker here. I'll still explain everything that's going on, but I'm just going to copy in the code just to be a little bit faster. So here, this is our title label, our subtitle label, and our CTA button. Our CTA button is going to be styled a particular way. And I have a helper function there to help us do that. It's called a make green button, which I'm going to go ahead and copy in the code here for our factories. So I'm in our factories file here. I'm just adding a factory method called make green button. And if we just take a look at this, what this function does is it returns us a UI button based on whatever text we pass in. In this case, we're going to want to pass in the word order. But basically, this is just a button set up for auto layout where we can set the title. We can basically set some properties on the title label, like adjust its font size to fit its width. That means if we got really compressed or expanded, it would adjust the font size to ensure that that text would lay itself out. We're going to adjust its content edge incense a little bit. What that means is we're going to add a little bit of spacing on the left, the bottom, and the right to give it this circular spaced view. We're then going to, the way we round this button is by setting its corner radius. I just know this button happens to be of a height of 40. So the corner radius, or half the diameter of that button, is going to be just half. The radius will be half of that, so I'm dividing it by 2, so it'll be 20. And we're making use of our dark green color here that we defined earlier just to give it that background. So let's just copy that function into factories. Then I'm going to go Control Command left arrow to go back to where we were before. And I can hit a Command B just to get this to compile. That should go away. But basically, here's the additional attributes we're going to add to our tile here. So let's go back now and let's go ahead and continue fleshing this out. Let's go into Layout and let's add the layout for these guys. Basically something like this. So for our title, we are going to set its auto layout mask to be false, as we always do. We're going to give it a preferred font of title 3. That's just the size after playing around with, I thought made sense. We're going to go ahead and bold it using this line here. And then we're going to set this color to be label. Subtitle is going to be very, very similar. It's just going to have a smaller size. Here we're using a preferred font size of footnote. Number of lines means this can be multi-line. When we set 0, that means it can actually be multi-lines, not line number of 0. And this line break mode means it's going to break by word as these labels get long and as it approaches this edge. And then the CTA button, which we defined up there to be that green CTA button, we're just getting it set up for auto layout by basically turning on its mask here. Then when it comes to layout, we just need to go ahead and do what we always do. Let's just go ahead and add those subviews here. Let's then go ahead and do some styling. This is going to be auto layout stuff. And we'll walk through this. I'll explain what's going on, but I'm just going to bring this over to save me some typing. Let's go here and let's just talk about how we're going to lay this out. So basically what we've got here, image view we've already covered, this title label, it's top anchor, and we're using the system spacing below and after syntax for auto layout, which just kind of reads kind of nice. So here we're going title label is going to be equal to the spacing after the image view bottom anchor. See how nicely that reads? And we're using a multiplier of 2 here, meaning we're going to have about 16 points of space here. Each multiplier, 1 is equal to 8 points. So here by making it 2, we're going to be 16. And then we're just going to do our leading. The title label leading anchor is going to be equal to the system spacing after here. We're going to give it a spacing of 2. And this one, we have to flip the order of. Here we actually go trailing anchor, this guy over here. Its constraint is going to be equal to the spacing after the title label, and we'll give it a multiplier of 2. That's basically it. We're just going to repeat something very similar for the subtitle, pinning it right underneath the title label. And the CTA button, we're going to do very similar. Its top anchor is going to sit beneath the subtitle bottom anchor with a multiplier of 2. And it's got a leading constraint just to make it flush over here. We'll use the same 2. And this one we will pin to the bottom. And this is important because we want to have a full layout going from top to bottom with no unambiguous constraints. So by pinning our CTA button to the bottom here, everything should be fully laid out. And that's it. So let's run this now. And actually, before we do that, I almost forgot. Let's actually set some content on these titles here. So for our title label, let's actually set the text on that to be this, breakfast made meatless. For our subtitle label, let's give that some text. Subtitle label.text. Here we're going to make it equal to this text, try the Beyond Meat cheddar bacon sandwich. Okay. And we've already got our image set. So with that now if we go Command R, let's see what happens here. Great. We've got our title appearing, we've got our subtitle appearing, and we've got our order button appearing. Good stuff. So now we've got our tile view displaying something really nice in our tile view controller here. We'd eventually like to start adding in these tiles here, but we'd like not to do it maybe such a hard-coded way. So now let's do a refactoring. Let's see if we can take our tile view and create an initializer on our tile view controller, which can actually take our image, the text for our title button here, the text for our subtitle, and see if we can go ahead and set that up. So I'm going to go Command 0 to bring back that menu on the left, just a handy little shortcut to toggle that menu there. Let's go back into our tile view controller. And in here, let's actually add a constructor or an initializer. One that's actually going to take some properties so we don't need to hard code everything as we're going. So here we've added an initializer method that's going to take a title, a subtitle, and an image name. And it's just telling us we need to do this required init thing. We'll do that. But basically by passing that in there, when we create a tile view controller, we can then go to our child tile view and set the title, subtitle, and image right in there. So what that means is on our tile view, we won't need to hard code these anymore. We can get rid of the title label text here. We can get rid of the subtitle text here, and we can get rid of the meatless setting that image here. Now, if we go back to our home view controller, we can actually make use of this new initializer multiple times and create more tiles than just the one we see here. So let's go back to our home view controller. And instead of having this plain old tile view controller, we can actually instantiate and use multiple tile controllers, setting up different titles and subtitles and images for each of our tiles here. So if we do that, we won't actually need, I'll leave these placeholders for now. Let's just go ahead and run this and see if everything's working and connected. And indeed it is. Great, we've got some different tiles here. We've got some images. Whoops, looks like we have a bit of an image problem here. This is the clipping. When you see this, what this is doing is this is taking the image. I probably didn't cut this one very well, and it's exceeding the edges here. One way I think we can fix this is if we go to our tile view and I adjust the image view to be, instead of scale aspect fill, I'm going to go scale aspect fit. Let me just do this and run this again and see what happens. But hopefully you saw there how it's actually kind of coming together. We've created a tile view controller. We're setting the text and things we like to see on it. And let's just see if this lays out a little bit better now. There we go. Okay, so by adjusting that, we can get that equal to fit. And there we go. We've actually got some tiles showing up. Great stuff. Phew. Okay, we're almost there. Just a few touch-ups before we wrap up. One, let's see how we can add a shadow onto our tile here. Now, I've played with shadows a bit. There's still a bit of a mystery and a black art to me. Let me show you what I came up with, and you can decide whether it's good or you can come up with something better. But basically, every core animation, every layer of a view, there's something we can make use of called a shadow layer. So this is a core animation object called shape layer. What we're going to do is we're going to create one of these things, set some attributes on it like corner radius and fill color, and then we're going to override layout subviews, call a method called add shadow. That's going to take this layer, create a Bezier curve around it. That's a computer graphics term for basically adding a curve around here. We're going to set some properties on it, like the background color of slate black, change its opacity to be 0.2, so it's a little bit faded out. We'll give the shadow radius a value. We'll give it an offset. And then we're going to take this shadow layer we create and add it. We're going to insert it as a sublayer on our view here. This is just some of the magic that goes on behind the scenes that we typically don't have to worry about or play with when we're working at higher levels of the UIKit API. But basically, if we do that and we run it, we will get a shadow effect appearing on screen here. Now, the one reason why, if you're wondering why we need to add this method called add shadow to layout subviews, is because when we're doing auto layout initially, we don't know the exact dimensions or ultimately how big this view is going to be. It needs to go through a passive auto layout, and it needs to check what's the device size, how wide is it, and only when we've gone through one passive auto layout do we actually know what the frame and bounds are of our tile view. So that's why by doing it in here and overriding layout subviews and calling add shadow here, when we do that, we know what the bounds of our shape are going to be for our view. That's why we have to override it in here. Don't worry if you don't understand shadows. I still don't. I still have to play with these a lot, just experiment. But this code will give you some kind of nice little shadow behind. And for us, that's good enough for now. Okay, two more touch-ups. Let's get rid of that pink color in the header. I'm just going to search my project for the color pink. It is in our home view controller header view. So if we go to Home View Controller, there's a line in there called Header View Background Color System in pink. I don't think we need this anymore. So let's just get rid of that. Perfect. And now let's go and while we're in our Home View Controller here, let's go ahead and just get rid of those other tiles. We don't need those anymore. So in our tiles array, let's just get rid of those other placeholders and just keep the ones we've created here. And if we go Command R there, we should just have the Starbucks tiles we want. And hey, that's looking pretty good, not bad. Hey, you made it, good stuff. Let's just quickly review what we did here. We started off with some placeholder views in our tile view, stack view, scroll view thing here. We added our own view controller with an extracted view so that we can lay out our views within view controllers, and that really helps keep things decluttered. We did some auto layout here. We've got some scrolling here, and now we have actual tiles in our home controller here. That's super, that's great. Congratulations, everyone. In the next couple of videos, we're going to take care of this tile at the very top. This one takes a little bit of work. This is like the star balance tile. Here you can see we've got some labels in here. We've got some graphic in here. We're not sure how that got created. We've got a fancy little animation here which shows out a little subview in here. In the next couple of videos, we're going to break down and go ahead and see how we can do that. But for now, take a break, grab a coffee, put your feet up, relax, and yeah, I hope you find that useful. Come back next time and we'll dive into the star balance view here. Okay, thank you so much for coming, everyone. Take care. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.